Hello, and welcome to Working Effectively with Clients with Challenging Behaviors. Today's session is presented by Joe Bloomfield. Before we get started, I want to mention a few logistical notes. In order to turn on live captioning, press the button with the CC symbol below at the bottom of your screen. This session will be recorded and materials will be uploaded to our LACS website within 1 week of the event. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to ask your questions. They'll be answered at the end of the presentation. And now I will pass it off to our presenter. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Joe Bloomfield, and I am an attorney with Mental Health Advocacy Services. And today we're going to be talking about working effectively with clients with challenging behaviors. So this is going to be a pretty big training, but what I would like everyone to do is type into the chat, what are some things that clients do that you feel are challenging? And I'll give you just a few seconds to do that. Go for it. Let it out. Yelling, yes. Not showing up. Demanding. Oh, see, here we go. Here we go. now we're getting it all out. So I obviously can't read all of them, but I do want all of you to realize that you are not alone. Everyone is feeling this way. Everyone is experiencing similar things to you. And this is a fact of both being an attorney, working in legal aid. And I wanted to thank LAC for having us because we really love giving this training as far and wide as we can. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about who we are. We are Mental Health Advocacy Services. We are a direct legal services organization in Los Angeles. And we've been giving this training for, at least 15 years. And many years ago, we were asked to put together a training about clients with challenging behaviors. And I think that the reason was that there's this belief that people with mental health disabilities often present with challenging behaviors. And sometimes they do. But I do want to say two things. First is that not every client with a mental health disability presents with challenging behaviors, and many people without mental health disabilities present with challenging behaviors. And that if you've been doing this a long time, you are already an expert in this. And if you are newer to this, you're an emerging expert, because we all handle these situations every day and we learn strategies that work for us. And I've been doing this training a really long time, and every time I learn something new about, different strategies. Okay, so we've talked about what clients do that feels challenging to us. Now let's talk about why clients can seem challenging. So these are just a few of the reasons. There's many others, but the first is fear of the unknown. Our clients don't know what to expect. They might not know if they're going to have a home to go home, if they're going to have a home after this is all done, if they're going to have money for basic necessities. They don't know if you can actually help them. They don't know if they can even trust you. Second, they feel powerless. Our clients go up against these systems time and time again. They get shuffled around to different organizations. We don't know how many organizations they had to go to actually get to you. A lot of our clients have experienced trauma. And for those of you, I'm sure a lot of you have done trainings in trauma-informed care. You might know that trauma can impact executive function and attention span. So how we receive information, how we're able to process information. Our clients, feel overwhelmed. They have multiple challenges in their lives, and they're all not legal. And we're focused on their legal issue, but that might not be the top of their mind. And then cultural and other differences, which we will talk about next. Okay, You've probably come up against a lot of these, but our perspectives differ from our clients. The first one is income. Even though, you know, we're not making the most in legal aid, you're probably still making more than your clients. And especially for people that have never had a safety net, they might approach money differently than you. So for example, if a client gets a big settlement, they might want to spend that money as fast as they can because they're scared if they don't, they might lose it. And that might feel irrational to you. Cultures, I'm in Los Angeles. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of cultures and microcultures, and California is even broader than that. This causes misunderstandings, miscommunications, and we're just not going to understand each culture and how they respond to different things. Generations. This one I ran up to a lot when I was a new attorney because a lot of my clients didn't trust me. They didn't think that I actually was a lawyer, that I understood what I was doing. And as I've gotten a little bit older, younger clients don't trust me as much because they don't think that I can understand them. And the last one is mental health. And that's why I'm here doing this training. People with mental health disabilities might need things that other clients don't need. They might need more time. They might need frequent breaks. We're going to talk more about this. But again, I want to emphasize that not everyone with a mental health disorder is challenging. And anyone who's worked in private practice knows this, that those clients can be incredibly more challenging. And often clients with mental health disabilities are less challenging because they don't want to be seen as irrational or a burden. Okay, so when we first meet a client at MHAS, this is the framework we use. And this comes from the disability community, but it can be used in a lot of different contexts. So it's called people first language. And the whole idea is that you put the person before their disability. So there is a difference between saying disabled person and person with a disability. When I say person with a disability, they are a full person, and the disability is just one of the characteristics that they have. When I say disabled person, it implies that their disability is what makes them who they are. And so we always approach people and clients with a people first language approach. So instead of saying, are you disabled? We would say, do you have a disability, or do you consider yourself as someone with a disability? I want to make clear that this is different than what we use in advocacy, right? So we don't want to say, it's not people first to say he suffers from depression, but my background is SSI. If I'm before an ALJ, I want to say he suffers from depression because there's not that same understanding. But this is how we approach people. It affirms their dignity. It shows that we see them as a human being first, instead of just this disabled client that we're going to help. And like I said, this is a disability concept, but it applies in so many different contexts. So this is why we say people experiencing homelessness instead of homeless people, or worse, the homeless. When we use a noun to describe a huge group of people, it really dehumanizes them. Similarly, we wouldn't say criminal. We would say, do you have a history of incarceration or something like that? There's all sorts of ways you can use this, but the way to go about this is, are you a person with, right? Because then you've recognized their humanity. Sometimes people do prefer that identity first language. It gets a little complicated. So for example, some people who have autism, that's people first language, prefer to be called autistic. And there's a lot of reasons why, and I've listed some of them here, but we use adjectives all the time to describe people, right? We don't say a person with beauty. We say a beautiful person, just like we would say disabled person. the disability is part of what makes them a person and part of what gives them value. It's not a negative in their life. It's something that makes them who they are and makes them unique. The key here, because I know this is confusing, like which one is my client going to prefer? People first, and then follow their lead. The whole idea behind this, and we're going to be talking more about this, is self-determination. We decide how to define ourselves, just like our clients decide how to define themselves, and we follow that lead. Okay, now we're going to get to the strategies. And that first interview, you're feeling a little nervous. You really don't know what your client is going to tell you, if you're going to be able to help them. So I know when I was in law school, what I learned was I need to know the who, what, where, when, how, right? I need to ask questions, figure out what happened, fill in the gaps, get the facts, right? We use a different approach. In that traditional style, the attorney controls the floor. They're the one asking the questions. Client-centered interviewing is when the client takes the lead and they tell their story. So the first thing you do in an interview, the first time you meet that client is, tell me what's going on, or what's brought you into here today. And they are going to tell their story in the way that they want to tell it without interruption. And just like our clients being able to define how they see themselves, this improves that, this is all about self-determination, right? Our clients often feel like people aren't listening to them. They feel, intimidated maybe by you as an attorney. And this gives them some sense of control and empowerment. And so what I do is let the client tell their story. And this can go on for several minutes. I often, sometimes I do look at my watch and, maybe I give them 7 minutes or 10 minutes. And I do not say anything until they feel like they've told me everything. And there's a lot of reasons to do this. One is that self-empowerment. One is that we give them more control over the situation. But it really allows us to approach our clients with, and this is that last bullet, a stated interest rather than a best interest perspective. And this is key in direct services legal aid. We might know what is the best option for our clients, right? Oftentimes we do feel like we know that option, but our clients know what's best for them based on their life, based on their lived experience, right? Just like we talked about how the way that some people might use money is different from how you would, doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just what they believe is in their best interest. It's what their stated interest is, but they tell you what their interest is. And when we lay out options for our clients, it is up to them to decide what those options are. You can tell them the risks and ramifications of all of those options, but they decide. And what's really important to remember here is that we all make bad decisions, right? We're allowed to make poor decisions. Our clients make bad decisions. Every one of us does. And we don't put our judgment on those decisions. And so sometimes this does get a little unruly, right? You're like asking the clients what's going on, and they just like talk for 10 minutes, right? And that can feel very overwhelming. So I use what's called a funnel approach. So when the client is talking to you and sharing their whole story, you're just writing down all of these issues that they're having. Okay, they're having a housing issue, they're having a benefits issue, they're having, an issue with their mom, whatever it is. Some of them are legal, some of them are not legal, some of them you might be able to help with, some of them you might not be able to help with. But you want to figure out what all of those issues are. Then when they are finished telling you their story, then you can fill in those holes. And what I like to do is, you funnel down until you get to the meat and you can move on to the next one. So you ask all the questions. You need to fill that housing bucket. You filled it up. You go to the next one. You go to the next one. You go to the next one. And then they've been able to tell their story. You've acted in this very client-centered way, but you've also done your attorney job of getting everything you need. And obviously, this doesn't always take place in one meeting, right? Okay. Strategies for communication. And you use these all the time. A lot of this is, instinctual for you, but sometimes we forget. And so that's why I have laid it out here. So plain language, this is so hard for us sometimes because we go to law school, we basically learn a different language, and then we, get these cases and we're using that language with our clients that have no idea what we're talking about. And, we've all felt that way when someone's telling us something that we feel like we should know, but we don't know. So we pretend to know, right? And we don't want that. We want to make sure that our clients are completely understanding us. And that goes to the second point. Always start from the beginning, like even earlier than you think you need to start, so that you are both on the same page. Don't assume any background knowledge. Don't assume that they know how they got to where they are. Start at the beginning. Provide space in the conversation. Silence is okay, right? If you've talked for a few minutes, give your client some time to process what you've told them and to ask you questions instead of moving on to the next. Reasonable accommodations. So we expect, the law requires, lots of providers to grant their employees, their tenants, their, everything, reasonable accommodations. And we owe those to our clients too. So this can be anything from more breaks. If you get the feeling that your client is really, has stopped listening to you, maybe it's overwhelmed, take breaks. If you feel like after those breaks, the client is really still not processing what you're saying, it's probably time to end the meeting and schedule another one. And maybe then that multiple short meetings instead of a long one is what really works for this client. I love visual aids, especially when you're going to court, which we all know is very intimidating for ourselves. So it's even more intimidating for our clients. And so, a picture of what the courtroom will look like and who the players are and where everyone sits and where they sit can be really helpful. And I think that this is helpful, in SSI hearings because it's different, right? Everything looks different, and who will be there and what's there, so that they feel comfortable and not completely, out of control because they don't know what to expect. And then the last one is the most important one and the most difficult one to do. We all know that we need to manage our clients' expectations. We need to tell them what we are able to do, what we're not able to do, where our representation starts, where our representation ends. But it is so hard because your client has come to you sharing very personal, private information, built this trust for you, and you want to help them. You want to help them with all of the things going on in their lives, but you can't. And we're going to talk about this later because this is so important. But it is so much better to be honest with clients, right? I can't do that. That's not in my practice area, whatever it is, than for them to be blindsided later. It's really important to draw a tight box around what you will do for the client and what you won't do for the client. And reiterate that when you feel like there's some confusion. Okay. This one I'm not going to spend too much time on because I think that most of us do this. We know that we're supposed to do this, but it's kind of like the plain language. Like it's something that we forget a lot of the time. I think that this active listening is most important in that first conversation, that client-centered, tell me your story conversation. Instead of furiously writing notes, making no eye contact with the client, you want to hear what they're saying. During this first conversation, I'm really kind of taking notes on what those funnels are instead of writing every single fact I've heard. I'm organizing myself and I am hearing their story. I'm reacting like a human, right? Sometimes we're so caught up in like figuring out what's going on, we're nervous, that we can forget like if something horrible has happened, we are reacting to that. And you know, the key here, self-empowerment, your client's being heard. That's what we really want to get across with this technique. Okay. A lot of our clients and us, right, are unreliable narrators. I can't tell you what I ate for breakfast yesterday. So we shouldn't expect that our clients are going to be able to tell their story chronologically and remember every fact, right? And then when our clients have other difficulties, like the, you know, deficits in executive function, concentration due to their trauma, due to their mental health disability, due to another disability, then it heightens that even more. So here are some strategies. This is kind of similar to what we talked about, like taking breaks, figuring out what's a better approach with this client. Short meetings, you know, 5-minute calls instead of an hour call. Speak with client on different days and different times. Not only to clarify facts, but also to figure out what is the best time for this client. A lot of clients who take certain medications might have good times during the day and bad times during the day. If a client is just got really bad news or is experiencing a mental health crisis, it is not the time for you to get the facts that you need. You need to wait on that. This is really important in the mental health world and clients with mental health disabilities because mental health symptoms ebb and flow, right? It's not like someone with schizophrenia is always experiencing, you know, delusions and hallucinations and not able to, you know, have a consistent train of thought. If your client is not able to answer your questions, you should end the conversation and try the next day and try the next day. This training is not about lack of capacity and diminished capacity. So if you got to that point, talk to your supervisor then. There are some really great trainings on that. Trust, building that trust is so important. You know, nobody wants to tell anyone bad facts about themselves. And when you're building this relationship with your clients, and they start to, you know, respect you, and maybe they even feel intimidated by you a little bit because of your education, they don't want to tell you bad facts, right? And so we have to be able to pull them out of them by developing that trust, obviously reiterating over and over again our confidentiality requirements to be able to get that information. And this may take multiple conversations. You might not get everything you need in 1 or 2 conversations, and that's a reasonable accommodation, right? We are allowing our clients the space they need to be able to trust us and give us all the information. And this might feel like you might be thinking, I don't have the time to do this, right? But it might actually save you time, because if you're having that 1 hour, you think you can get everything in that 1 hour conversation, and you end that hour and there's still so many things you don't know, and maybe you've been getting information that you just don't think is right, it doesn't make sense. If you instead had these, you know, 5-10 minute calls, and maybe you have like a few of them, it actually in the end is less time altogether. Okay. Another slide, because this is so common, right? We have so many, because we're human and humans forget things. So figure out what works best for your clients. Some in person, some telephone is better. Obviously, we're lawyers. Review as many documents as possible. You can ask clarifying questions that it's a little harder in California about time of year. Was it snowing? Some of you that could work, but not for us in LA. But that can really build a timeline or allow you to get some facts and fill in some of those holes. You often want to go first is to other people, right? Our client is having trouble, explaining what's going on. We feel like we're missing so many facts. And we know that if we just talk to their mom, we just talk to their friends, we would get all the information we need. And I have learned this firsthand, that this should only be used as a last resort, and obviously with client consent under our rules of professional responsibility. But what I've learned is that you never know when there can be a conflict. An example that I had when I was doing mostly SSI work, I was talking to a mom and she really wanted to get her son on SSI. And then when I talked to the son, he did not want to be on SSI because he knew that once he started getting some income, his mom was going to throw him out of the house. She didn't want him living there anymore. And so this was a huge conflict. And I would have never guessed that just wanting a client, a family member to get more money would result in this conflict. But it happens all the time. And it also goes back to the best interest versus stated interest, right? When we rely on other people, then it's very easy to substitute what they think is the best interest for your client for the client's own stated interest. And so obviously you can ask with client consent, you can ask, family members, loved ones, caseworkers, social workers, questions about the facts, right? When did this happen? When did that happen? But when it comes to what does the client want, that is really not something that you should be asking someone else. That is for the client to decide themselves. Okay, so this is, if you remember one thing today, it is this. It is okay and necessary to set limits. I know when I started in legal aid, I felt like I had to be thinking about my clients all the time, in the shower, when I was driving to work, when I was enjoying time with family. I just felt this compulsion, right? That like I had to do this for them, or, I wasn't going to be able to win their case or whatever. And then they would be, homeless or, whatever. So one thing that's important to tell yourself, and this is hard for the attorneys out there, we are only attorneys, or you're only a paralegal. We are not social workers, teachers, parents, friends. The scope of what we can do for our clients is really fairly limited. It is limited to these discrete legal issues that we hope we can solve for them. And it is so important that our clients know that is the role we play in their lives. And so that allows you to really set this professional boundary with your clients. So here are some ways to do this. You can set limits on how many times a day or week a client can call. I haven't looked at the chat, but I'm guessing that there are so many comments about a client who calls you, who is calling you 30 times a day. It happens all the time. Here's one strategy that can work. So let's say it's a client and their case, really nothing is going on in the case, and you're working on all these other things, and the client is still calling you 5 times a day. What I like to do is tell them, Mr. Smith, I can't answer every time you call me. And there's actually not much going on in your case. How about instead, every Wednesday at 4, I'm going to call you and we'll talk for about 10 minutes. That's about how long I'll be able to talk for you. And I'll give you an update on your case, and you can, tell me what else is going on. Put that in your calendar. And then every day, every Wednesday at 4, you call that client. So what that does is, one, it like really increases trust in the relationship, right? You tell your client, I'm going to call you Wednesdays at 4, and then you call them. It also helps them feel more in control, right? They know that they can expect this call. And if anything, if there's an emergency, if anything else happens, you'll call them before them. You can set email text limits. I had a client who added me to her, like a group text with her friends. And I was like, no, that's not. If a client is emailing you too much, you can tell them that you won't be responding to their emails. This one is really, really important. You can end telephone calls. And this one is so hard to do. But if you have a client who is yelling at you and you've been on the phone with them and you're trying to calm them down, it's not productive, right? What I like to do there, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, is hang up, tell them I'll call them in 10 minutes, set my alarm, call them in 10 minutes. But really, what is key here is that all of these things that feel hard to do sometimes sets these professional boundaries, right? And clarifies your role to the clients. You are not their therapist. You are not their family member. You are their attorney, and you are not their like attorney forever. You are helping them with this issue. And what's important also in our world, in mental health advocacy services, is it's so important to set these boundaries, also because it doesn't always end up this way, but we are less likely to be the person our client comes to when they're having a mental health crisis, something else, something personal, if they know that we have a professional relationship, not a personal one. And we do not want our clients coming to us when they have a mental health crisis because we are not qualified to handle those. Okay. I've done one of my trainings before. You have seen this because I love this so much. I just keep this on my phone. It is my favorite. So I know when I was a kid, I read, I love that things. I read The Giving Tree, and I remember thinking, what a beautiful, amazing, selfless tree. I want to be that tree. I want to give my branches and apples and everything to the world, right? And for those of you that haven't read this story, let me take a step back. I cannot assume background knowledge. What this book is about, it's about a boy and his best friend, the tree. And at first, the tree gives its branches. And then the tree, well, first I think it's the apples, and then the branches, and then the trunk, and then everything. And as the boy grows up, he's using all these things for the tree. The tree's still sitting there. And then at the end of the story, the boy comes back. He's now a man, and the tree is a stump. And there's been a lot of, I'm not the first person to see this, but we don't want to be a stump, right? That tree is not selfless. That tree has not set boundaries, right? If the tree had set boundaries, both the boy and the tree would be happy. And so this is cheesy, but I do think people remember it. So you do not want to give away your whole self to your clients. You don't want to give away your branches and your trunk. You want to give away the things that will grow back, and that's your apples, right? Your legal knowledge. You give them away, you learn, they grow, you thrive. And what's really important about this training is that we're talking about communicating with clients with challenging behavior. But if those boundaries aren't set, and if you don't manage those expectations, then we can move into that compassion fatigue world, maybe even that vicarious trauma fatigue world. And that is not the way to sustain a long legal aid career. Okay. So I am going to leave time for questions, and we're we're getting there. Okay, so I know not every organization uses these, but Mental Health Advocacy Services does, and I find them incredibly helpful in managing expectations. So a limited scope representation agreement is just that. Basically, you're not representing the client from, A to Z, you're representing them from A to C. You are only helping them with the demand letter to their landlord, not the UD, something like that. This representation agreement says that very clearly. And actually, we have added to our representation agreement what we're not doing. So it says, we will do this, we will not do this. And it is very important that you go over this with your client, that they understand, and that they know where your representation begins and where it ends. And a lot of times, we need to come back to these. A month down the line, your client will say, wait, no, I thought that you said that you were going to do this. And you'll say, actually, you remember in the representation agreement, let's pull it out together. It said we would do this. And so it could really help cement those expectations that you're really trying to manage during the whole representation. Okay. Stressful meeting moments, the worst. Oh, these are the worst. And we've all experienced these. The client is yelling at you. The client is swearing at you. You're concerned for your safety. Okay. The key here is you deserve respect, right? You are treating your client with respect, and you deserve to be treated with respect in return. And you can say that to your clients. And often that is all you need to do. If your client's yelling at you, swearing with you, and you say, Mr. Smith, I'm treating you with respect, and I deserve to be treated with respect too. He might say, oh, I'm so sorry. I just got, I'm just really, worried about this situation. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it isn't though, right? So if you're in the office, make sure your door is open, kind of, move around, make sure that you're feeling safe. But this next one, the breather, I found to be very effective. And this, I kind of alluded to this earlier. So let's say we do most of our work over the phone. So I'm going to give it an example over the phone, but you can do this in person as well. And they are just so mad and they're swearing at you. And this is just not a productive conversation. And you have a million other things to do. So what you do is you say, Mr. Smith, we're not really having a productive conversation. I think we both need to take a breather. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to get some water. Why don't you do the same? And then I'm going to call you back in 15 minutes. Set that in your phone. When that 15-minute alarm goes off, you call Mr. Smith back. Usually, this is enough that both of you feel more calm and can continue the conversation. It also, just like those Wednesday meetings at 4, builds trust. And that, when someone trusts you, sometimes it's a little bit easier to regulate the emotions, right? Sometimes this doesn't work. And I want to tell you, I've been supervising lawyers for a really long time. We want to know, please tell us when this is happening to you. I am more than not happy, but I will call clients and tell them that you can't talk to her that way. She deserves to be treated with respect. You should not be we all experience these, but you shouldn't be experiencing them alone, right? You need to speak up when it's happening, and we are there to help you. Okay, I have to include this in here because sometimes this is where we sadly end up. Sometimes, and this is pretty rare, we're a small, medium-sized organization, and I would say maybe once or twice a year we need to terminate representation, but I talk to a lot of other organizations that are wondering if they can terminate representation. And almost always they have gone so above and beyond what is required of them under Rule 1.16, because that's what we do as legal aid attorneys. But let me read what the rule says. And this is, there's a lot of other reasons that a lawyer may withdraw, but this is the one we rely on the most often. So this is B. A lawyer may withdraw from representing a client if the client renders it unreasonably difficult for the lawyer to carry out the representation effectively. Very important. This is qualified that the lawyer needs to take reasonable steps to avoid reasonably foreseeable prejudice, meaning if trial's tomorrow, you can't withdraw, even if the client has rendered it unreasonably difficult. So I'm often asked, what is unreasonably difficult? Well, you've made all the reasonable accommodations, right? You've given your client more time. You've done in-person meetings instead of over the phone meetings. You've, used visual aids. You've done everything you can think of, and yet it's not working. Often I find that there is a time element. So there is actually an objective measure. If you look at the time and this case has taken you 3 times longer, 4 times longer than a similar case, then I think you can say it's unreasonably difficult. If the client is constantly changing their mind to the point where nothing can be accomplished through the representation, you can't carry out the representation effectively, right? So this happens, and like I said, when I talk to other organizations, they've usually done all of the reasonable things that they can do, and it's an unfortunate fact of our business that we can't help everyone, and that sometimes staying on the case is going to make it impossible for us to help other people, and going back to the giving tree, impossible to sustain this career. Okay, so we actually have quite some time for questions, which I think is good because there's so many people in this. But I did want to just, if you remember anything from this conversation, client-centered interview, they take the stage, not you. Stated interest, not best interest. We are listening to what the client wants, and though we might know in our hearts what's best for the client, we don't. And so we are not substituting what we think their best interest is for what they actually want. Reasonable accommodations when necessary. Figure out what your client needs to be able to share their information as effectively with you as possible. And manage expectations and set boundaries. The number one thing to remember from this, that it is okay, it is necessary to set boundaries with your clients, and you cannot do everything for them. Okay, now let's go to questions. I'm just going to leave on the slides for now. Yep, exactly. Thank you, Kathy. You are right. That's why we follow our clients' leads, and we. Kathy said that some people prefer identity first language, prefer disabled person. So of course, we take their lead and we use whatever language they prefer. We just start with the people first approach. Okay, how to deal with clients who may be experiencing paranoid delusional episodes during rep. So my first answer would be what we talked about, the ebb and flow of the mental health, symptoms. If they are experiencing paranoid and delusional episodes the entire representation, then we're in a different world, right? We're kind of more in that capacity world. But if they're experiencing them off and on, which is much more common actually, then it is that reasonable accommodation of, am I noticing that this happens at a time, at a time during the day? Like, let's say they take their medication in the morning, and by the time it's night, like that's when maybe these are starting to happen. Or when something very stressful has occurred, maybe you want to wait and call them at a different time. But if it's happening all the time, then that is something that you need to talk to your supervisor about, because then it's really a different world. Don't have social workers. Okay, if the firm office has social workers on staff, when would you suggest using the social worker for clients with challenging behaviors? We sadly do not have social workers on staff. I wish I did. And I'm so glad you asked that question because I want to make clear I'm not a social worker. I am not a licensed mental health practitioner. We give this presentation purely from the perspective of a legal aid attorney. I do think that social workers can be so helpful in terms of dealing with these behaviors. They can help you figure out what reasonable accommodations to provide. They can be the ones that are, kind of assessing the clients in what might be helpful for them. So I would say often, if that's possible, would be great. Do you have tips where a client is disassociating while in court? That might be beyond this training. Why don't you reach out to me? Because I feel like much more information is required for this question to be able to even answer it. Like, are they on the stand? Are they, what kind of case is it? And I might not be the best person to answer that question. So if you reach out to LAC, they can connect you with me. They didn't do XYZ because, okay, I'm sorry, let me read the question out loud. How to deal with clients who repeatedly states they didn't do XYZ because they were suicidal, attempted it. I've told them to contact their therapist, doctor hotlines, but they have stated they don't need a hotline. Okay, so we do have a version of this presentation where we talk more about suicidal ideation. I did not include it in this presentation, but what you're doing is absolutely right. If a client expresses any kind of suicidal ideation, the first thing you say is, I am not qualified to help you with this, but I want to find someone who is qualified with you, qualified to help you. Because this has happened multiple times, it doesn't sound like there is, like an attempt is happening anytime soon. I would definitely say if they start to, if their language starts to change, if, there's, an increase in stress. But this is really tough. But if they're not doing what you need them to do for the representation, then it's not going to be the representation, right? And so that is when we're looking at maybe not withdraw, but is there something we can do to restrict what our representation is so we can actually get something done, XYZ. And then another important thing here is getting informed consent to talk to therapist, doctor, to see if they can assist you in this and just this, obviously not the legal issue. Such a great, okay. Internal deadlines to close cases. Well, hopefully your supervisors and organizations can provide you reasonable accommodations with those internal deadlines. I mean, I think that, a court deadline, an appeal deadline, like something like that can be really tricky, but I think an internal deadline can be massaged a little bit. But if that's not what you meant by your question, let me know. Okay. Any advice, tips on managing expectations when you are the new attorney taking on the client's case in the office, just setting the boundaries right? I mean, hopefully the attorney before you has started that process and setting boundaries. and you can continue what they're doing. But if you can't, just do exactly what we talked about. There's nothing different about substituting in or taking on a case from another attorney. You just draw the tight box around the representation. If they ask you for personal help, you say no, you provide a referral. If they ask you to do something that's outside the scope of your case, again, you say no. So it's all about figuring out the boundaries as a new attorney. But I think just you asking the question, like, you're good. Oh boy, I don't know if I can answer this one. How to help clients with perspective. And I want to say, if anyone has answers to these questions, feel free to chime in. They're very tricky. And as I said at the beginning, you are an expert or an emerging expert just as much as I am. And there is not always an answer, right? It's not like a legal issue that we can research. Sometimes there's just, a couple bad options. Okay, how to help clients with perspective when they are hanging their self-worth, identity, and vindicating their interests in a particular case. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by this question. I do think, though, that just as you are only an attorney, this is only a legal case for them. And so I think it's really like continuing to set those boundaries. But if I'm not totally understanding the question. Okay, we have used limiting language with specific examples of reasons we would withdraw from rep if we find out that the client has failed to share critical information. Yes, and that is in the rule, I believe. A few other reasons you may withdraw is insist upon presenting a claim or defense in litigation or asserting a position that is not warranted under existing law and cannot be supported by good faith, breaches a material term. Yes, so these that may come from the rule. I don't know it off the top of my head, but there are other reasons that you may withdraw, and they do sometimes, come up in these situations as well. Any questions? Okay, well, I'm going to stop my share. And well, thank you all so much. If you do have additional questions, these things come up all the time. They're so tricky to deal with. I hope you realize that, like, these are difficult for everyone. These are great things to communicate, commiserate with your colleagues. We're in a virtual office right now, and one thing that's really missing is the ability to hang up that call and go to go next door, the office next door, and say, oh my gosh, you can't believe the call I just had, and talk it out. And those, that can be really important as well. And those people that you can, even if it's not getting solutions, just talk through these things because they're all really difficult. Okay, well, I am going to, is there another question? Okay. I'm going to turn off my video and then I will hand it over to Lack. If they're there.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. This webinar was hosted by the Legal Aid Association of California, also known as LAC. We are the membership organization for California's civil legal aid nonprofits. Our job is to advocate in the legislature, in the courts, and with the State Bar of California on behalf of the community of nonprofits that serve low-income Californians. In addition to our online and in-person trainings, LAC provides coordination and advocacy for increased funding to support organizations like yours. Thank you.